Here's a number that should not exist: $20 billion. That is a conservative mud estimate of what it would cost to build Jurassic Park. Not the movie, the business. The actual operational guests paying to enter, dinosaurs not eating the guest business. And someone in the universe of that film decided it was a good idea. You are about to sit through the pitch deck, not the version John Hammond sold to his investors, all wonder and amber and the miracle of life. The real one, the one with the line items. This is the version where someone had to look at a Velociraptor and ask, what does this cost per day to keep alive? And is that number going to show up on a balance sheet? It is. And it is a very large number. Let's start where every business starts. Before there is a single dinosaur, before there is a single guest, before anyone has been terrified or eaten. Let's talk about the science. De-extinction, bringing a species back from genetic oblivion, is not free. Colossal Biosciences, the most serious real-world attempt at something adjacent to this, has raised over $225 million just to attempt woolly mammoth revival. And a mammoth is basically a hairy elephant with bad PR. A Tyrannosaurus rex is 65 million years more complicated. Conservative estimates put de-extinction R&D for a single dinosaur species at somewhere between $10 million and $100 million. And Hammond doesn't want one species. He wants dozens. We are already, before a single enclosure is built, looking at research costs that could exceed $1 billion. Now you need somewhere to put the science. The genetics lab, InGen's crown jewel, the place where the magic happens, is a high-containment biotech research facility. Buildings like that run $500 to $2,000 per square foot to construct. A 50,000 square foot facility lands you somewhere between $25 million and $100 million, just for the lab. And that lab is on an island. This is where it gets expensive in a very specific and painful way. Remote island construction carries a cost premium of 2 to 5 times over mainland builds. Every bag of cement, every steel beam, every electrical component has to be shipped. The logistics bill alone could fund a small hospital. So, before we have built a single enclosure or hired a single employee, we have already spent, conservatively, $1 to $2 billion on science and infrastructure foundation. Hammond called it a flea circus. We are calling it a capital expenditure problem. Now let's build the park itself. Disney's Animal Kingdom, the closest real-world analog to what Jurassic Park is attempting, cost $800 million in 1998. Adjusted for today, that is roughly $1.5 billion. And Animal Kingdom does not have animals that can break through reinforced concrete barriers and eat a Land Cruiser. The T-Rex enclosure alone is a category-defining construction project. Extrapolating from what major zoos spend on elephant exhibits, $15 to $30 million, and applying a substantial danger premium for an animal that weighs 8 tons and has no evolutionary memory of electric fencing, you are looking at somewhere between $50 and $150 million for one enclosure. Now multiply that across the full roster of Jurassic Park species: Triceratops, Brachiosaurus, Dilophosaurus, Velociraptors, each requiring custom containment engineering, each requiring moats and barriers scaled to an animal that has never existed in a controlled environment. And enclosure costs alone stretch past $1 billion without breaking a sweat. The resort hotel adds another layer. A 500-room luxury property costs somewhere between $300 million and $500 million to construct on the mainland. On a remote Costa Rican island with a 2 to 5 times logistics premium, you are looking at somewhere between $600 million and $1.5 billion for the place guests sleep before they potentially get eaten. Add it all up: the science, the lab, the island infrastructure, the enclosures, the resort, the roads, the visitor center, the electrified fencing that apparently cannot stay on during a tropical storm, and a realistic construction budget lands somewhere around $20 billion. Dollars. Write it down. Now we operate the thing. This is where the story gets genuinely dark. Every dollar spent building the park is now a fixed obligation demanding a return, while the operating costs begin stacking on top of it day after day, whether a single guest shows up or not. Staffing a park of this scale, roughly 2,000 acres containing animals that represent an active existential threat to every person on the property, requires somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 full-time employees. Keepers, veterinarians, security staff, hospitality workers, engineers, electricians, and the people whose entire job is maintaining the fencing that stands between your guests and a velociraptor. For the animals specifically, the standard is roughly one keeper for every 4 to 6 large animals. 50 dinosaurs requires at minimum 10 to 15 dedicated animal keepers, but these are not giraffes. These are animals with no domestication history, no behavioral literature, no established veterinary protocols. You are not hiring zookeepers. You are hiring pioneers, and pioneers charge accordingly. The San Diego Zoo employs approximately 3,500 staff to manage roughly 3,700 animals, nearly a 1-to-1 ratio. If Jurassic Park scales anywhere near that model, and given the danger profile it should, the keeper staff alone becomes one of the largest single cost centers on the balance sheet. Let's talk about what it costs to keep a large predator alive for a year. SeaWorld spends somewhere between $1 million and $2 million per orca annually, feeding, medical, habitat maintenance. An orca is dangerous in water. A T-Rex is dangerous everywhere. The annual care cost for a single Tyrannosaurus could conservatively reach $2 to $5 million per year. Across a full park population, animal care costs alone likely exceed $100 million annually. That is before a single employee paycheck, before a single maintenance contract, before anyone has fixed the moment the tour vehicles inevitably break down. And they will break down. Power. The island runs on its own generation system. Remote island power costs 3 to 5 times more per kilowatt hour than mainland grid power. A park running high voltage containment fencing 24 hours a day, climate-controlled dinosaur habitats, and a full resort hotel has an electricity bill that would make a small city uncomfortable. And then there is insurance. This is the line item that no one in the pitch deck wants to discuss. Adventure tourism liability claims average $2 to $5 million per serious incident. A fatality can reach $10 to $25 million in settlement costs. Jurassic Park is not adventure tourism. Jurassic Park is a property where the core attraction is capable of hunting humans as prey. No standard insurer touches this. You are looking at bespoke catastrophic liability coverage, if you can find an underwriter willing to write the policy at all, at a cost that could rival your entire animal care budget. SeaWorld runs total annual operating expenses of approximately $1.2 to $1.4 billion across all its parks combined. Jurassic Park is one location, with animals that are categorically more dangerous, on a remote island with no mainland supply chain. A realistic annual operating cost for Jurassic Park almost certainly exceeds $2 billion per year. Now let's look at the other side of the ledger, revenue. The good news, and there is some, is that people would absolutely pay to see a living dinosaur. The question is, how many people and how much? Disney World's peak ticket price has crossed $189 per day. Jurassic Park is not Disney World. It is the single most extraordinary thing that has ever existed in human history. A $500 ticket price is not unreasonable. It might actually be too low. But the island creates a hard ceiling on capacity. Nublar is not Orlando. There are no roads connecting it to a metropolitan area. Every guest arrives by boat or helicopter. Logistics alone constrain annual attendance to somewhere around 1 million visitors, and that may be optimistic. At $500 per ticket, 1 million visitors generates $500 million in annual admission revenue. Add in-park spending, hotels, restaurants, gift shops selling merchandise that people would absolutely buy, and you might reach $800 million to $1 billion in total annual revenue. Against $2 billion in operating costs, you are losing $1 billion a year, every year, before you pay back a single dollar of the $20 billion you spent building the place. Let that land for a moment. Break even on a $20 billion construction investment requires not just covering operating costs, but generating profit above them. At $500 million of annual profit, which requires nearly doubling your revenue, you pay back the construction cost in 40 years. And that is assuming nothing goes wrong. No hurricane, no containment breach, no incident that triggers a liability cascade and causes your insurance underwriter to quietly cancel your policy. The math requires 40 years of flawless operation. The film resolves in about 72 hours. This is the part of the pitch deck where the room goes quiet. The numbers are not bad because of bad luck or a greedy systems engineer. They are bad because of something more fundamental, the structure of the business itself. Hammond's fatal error was the unit economics. Unit economics is simply a business term for, does each customer bring in more money than they cost you to serve? At Jurassic Park, the answer is structurally, permanently no. The park's costs scale with the biology, the revenue scales with the island, and the island always wins. There is a version of this business that could theoretically survive, not as a theme park, but as something else entirely. A single species, highly restricted research and experience facility, one dinosaur, maximum security, 100 guests per year at $250,000 per person. That is $25 million in revenue against a manageable cost base. But that is not what Hammond built. Hammond built wonder at scale. He looked at the most dangerous animals that have ever lived and decided the correct response was to invite families with children. That instinct, that generous, reckless, magnificent instinct, is why the movie works. And it is exactly why the business does not. You came in here with a number, $20 billion, and you have watched that number get buried under operating costs, insurance premiums, island logistics, and the fundamental problem of trying to monetize an apex predator. The single insight at the center of all of this is simpler than any of the spreadsheets. Jurassic Park is not a business that failed because of bad luck or bad people. It is a business whose cost structure makes profitability mathematically impossible under any realistic revenue model. The dinosaurs were never the existential threat. The balance sheet was. Hammond stands in that park at the end, watching the animals he created, and he says life found a way. He's right. It just found a way to cost $2 billion a year to contain. And no amount of wonder, not even his, was ever going to make that number work.